Hello everyone. So I'm Eric at the YakRover, and today we would like to talk about um, creating a collaborative field demonstration around the concept of rovers and what we can do with them. So at the beginning of the year, we defined a few goals we would like to achieve, and field testing is maybe one of them. Okay, so it's still a pending question, but the idea is that. So far, we have different builds that are mostly designed and constructed in isolation, okay? And with a specific application in mind that are usually isolated. And so field test here is an idea to drive more collaboration across the group um, and to take advantage of the fact that a lot of us have very different background and capability skills, basically mechanical, software, electrical, and so on. So the goal of field testing, of deciding a common scenario, would be to make us collaborate more and maybe to create something bigger than each of us can achieve. And so, yes, and one last point is that the goal in terms of time is maybe to have something ready by the end of the year for the demo day that we'd like to do this year too. Okay, so a few criteria that are very loose, okay, but just to maybe to frame a bit the discussion, okay, is that at the YakRover, we have a bit the fun factor, okay, where we like to enjoy what we do. Okay? Another criteria would be that somewhat we like it to be a bit impressive, if not unique, if possible. But there is this wow factor that is intrinsically motivating, okay, and see the blood of the people, right? Okay. And last aspect is to be a bit is strongly related. Okay, it's about something very challenging. Okay, and so me, I'm more into software, okay, and into everything about computation, including the hardware. But I hope this opportunity can be maybe a challenge in, for example, dealing with the mechanical parts where I have much less experience, for example. So these are just generic criteria. And after a few questions, maybe to frame the discussions also, is what do we want to show? Okay, so is there something that we think is representative of the group? What do we want to learn? Okay, so that's more personal question, but it can also be a group question. Okay, so typically, if we look at rover missions, there is so much to do. Okay, as a team. Okay, that is something that maybe we'd like to learn by experience. Basically. And the last point here is um, maybe we can choose a scenario that is not necessarily about space, but that we can put in a space context as well. Okay, so for example, a few companies are building rovers to do what? To do space mining. Okay, mining on asteroids and on planets or satellites like the moon. Okay, well, space mining is shouldn't be too much different than Earth mining. Okay, perhaps actually we can start on Earth because it's less challenging. We have atmosphere and stuff like that. So such kind of ideas. So these are just generic criteria and questions. Okay. So I've tried to put together a short list of possible ideas. Okay, just to bootstrap discussions. And I think most of our discussion today will be to discuss them and to discuss alternative ideas that we may have. Okay. I will come back to this slide, but just one view on a slide we discussed at the beginning of the year is how we see collaboration. Okay, so concretely, it's we are a distributed team all over the planet. Okay, and it seems our current conclusion is that it will be much easier and much more relevant to collaborate on software. Okay, but it's not bound to that. I just put this slide as a reminder of what we were discussing a few months back. Okay. So a quick review of the bootstraps. Okay, so I identified 6 with different level of detail. Okay, but there is a pattern. Okay, is that all of them are about mobile rovers. Okay, I think it's a property of rovers that we want to that is really central, okay, because that differentiate a rover from, let's say, a robotic arm that would serve coffee. Okay, um, a robotic arm is mobile in the sense that it's articulated, but it doesn't move around. Okay, like a Roomba in your house. So it's a property that is common to all of these um, scenarios. So the first one is just to map a cave. Okay, and so the idea is to have a rover chassis that is appropriate to a cave environment. So typically it's a bit sandy and there may be big rocks and so on. So there are consequences on the kind of wheels we would consider, the kind of chassis, with the height of the chassis, things like that. Okay, so it's very simple, but it frames a lot of the mechanical power requirements and computing requirements in many ways. Also, we have the word lidar and SLAM come back over and over, and this is a typical case where a lidar, so hardware and software, would be pretty useful. The second one is I just call it the soul farmer. Okay, so this is derived from what one of my PhD advisors a long time ago is doing now. Okay, in Israel, by the way. Okay. And so it's derived from that. It's a more simple idea that now we have many solar farms, okay? And usually solar farms are installed in a very specific way, where to maximize the sunlight that comes to the solar panels, okay? But the thing that it depends on the season and so on, okay? And some farms they manually move the the solar panels. It takes a lot of work and so on. Okay? So the idea would be to have one or several rovers roaming around a solar farm and make basically a heat map of light over time, okay? And either report that to a dashboard so that it can be analyzed later, okay? Or if there is a way to automate the move of solar panels, to interact with the solar panel and to so that it can change its orientation, something like that. The third one is a self-driving race. Okay, so I think it's pretty easy to understand. Okay, but it would be a kind of game approach of field testing. Okay, and if you remember, I think it was in the early 2000, when there was the Stanford team winning the DARPA challenge of having a car, a real car, okay, driving autonomously across stretch of desert. Okay, it could be something like that. Okay, the advantage of this scenario is that we can have many kind of hardware. Okay, and we can visit the different trade-offs. Some people will use wheels, some people will use legs, and so on. The fourth one is a collaborative task. Okay, and so this is derived more from what Anuraj is doing with his rover. So his Land Rover and the drone that goes with it. Okay, but here it's also related to what Brian presented last week with rockets. Okay, when at some point we had, I think Venkatesh mentioned that perhaps an interesting scenario is to study, the landing of a rover. Okay, so it could be one of the field tests we do is to see how a rover that we drop from a tall building could recover from the drop, basically. Number 5 is the less detailed one. It's about scavenging. It's a topic that comes back regularly in our discussions over the past since the beginning. Okay, and the idea is to have one rover use the part of another rover dynamically. Okay, so it's a bit wild. Okay, but maybe we can come up with a restricted definition of this scenario to as a feasible field test for this year. The last one is I call it the location fabric, and that would be a set of mobile rovers that spread over determined area, and the goal is to provide a triangulation service, okay, like a replacement of our GPS when we don't have any GPS. And so this is very concrete because we have a company here in Japan who have started to do that for the moon and Mars. Okay, so they are building a very cheap rover, very cheap, very small. Okay, how big is it? It's how, does, how can I say? I like to compare it to I don't know. It's something like 15 centimeter long and on 5 centimeter wide. Okay, so sorry, I can't convert to the in inches, but you get the idea. Okay, it's smaller. Okay, it's autonomous, it's mobile. Okay? And I think they are sending one this year. Okay, the launch is planned for September, but they have a strong backup from many companies, so strong finance. They have announced a couple of weeks ago a plan to send 100 of them by 2023. Okay, so starting this year. And the goal of these 100 rovers on the moon, yes, on the moon, yes, is to provide an alternative to GPS. Okay, and so this small scenario would be to have a small scale of that here on Earth. Okay, so we don't need because we have GPS, but it could be interesting to see what we can achieve basically if we ignore the GPS signal for now. Okay, so that's a quick overview of just ideas. Um, um, what do you think about maybe in turn, if you have any idea? Okay, we take a few minutes to for people who want to share their ideas, so that I can add them on the list, and after we can maybe narrow down the ones that we are more interested in. Would anyone have any alternatives? Please, Mayor.
I don't have a particular idea, but I have a question and an idea. My question is, how much of this demo is for us and how much is it for outside people? And my idea, which is relevant to several of these bootstraps, is that we should look for an activity that each one can do in their own living room, but that we can merge them together. So for example, if we're talking about a race, we could have the race where my rover's in my living room and Rex is in his garage, but we define the task in such a way and we show the results in such a way that it's a race between the two rovers. You know, they're synchronized in time, they have a similar task, maybe they're somehow aware of each other. Because one of the things that I do know that we want to do, and it has nothing to do with rovers, it has to do with remote working together. So I think our demo day should be showing that. But I
Yes,
don't have, for any of these particular ideas, I don't have.
So there is an important aspect here is about the logistics. Okay, so depending on the kind of project, that's a very different kind of logistics. A real race, yes, would require to collect the rovers at the same place. Okay, and that would be nice to meet one day. Okay, but with COVID, maybe it's better not to plan that. Sure. After your first questions, a comment on your first questions about is it more for us or more for outside? Okay? I think it's something we can tune. Okay, and I think it should be both. Okay, so that's part of the that's part of the questions I was so what do we want to show and what do we want to learn? Okay, I think that's a trade-off here. Okay, that I think the goal is to show something. Okay, at the demo day. That's the goal of the field testing here. Okay? But at the same time, if we imagine how the show would happen, okay, there would be the actual demo, okay, but there would be discussions about different topics around it, okay, different kind of challenge, different kind of trade-offs, different kind of of maybe kind of, let's say, discoveries. Okay, if it's just discovery for us. Okay, and so I think that to answer those questions, we need to discuss more and to refine what we prefer. But given the nature of our group, distributed with heterogeneous skills, basically, I think all of us will learn something somewhere.
I was going to recommend that maybe that criteria list is where we need to, it'd be worth calling out that how we want to work is also super important for what it is we end up doing, because I think, sort of as Mayor said, like, we're not all going to be in one room having a robot race, as fun as that might be. So we need to like kind of optimize the project for not only like the amount of like type of task it is, but like what the collaboration is going to be that gets it done.
I added a slide after yours, Eric, with a comment I wanted to discuss. So I think it's partly speaks to what both Rhett and Mayor said. So last night when I was thinking about it, it occurred to me that if you try and design this year's demo day in a way that's kind of like a template that can be repeated for the next 10 years, say, in a way that accumulates capability and advancement, I can think of like two possible directions. Like one is to pick like something nobody else has done, but we are kind of like positioned to do, like maybe it's in our sweet spot somehow, like, the distributed stuff, since we're not all in one place, maybe one of the things we can do is like, and since the theme is an OS, we have a tasking shell similar to the one you guys used for last year's demo. And there it can be something like, take a photograph of this latitude and longitude, and the nearest rover goes there, right, without actually targeting a rover. And then it just figures out that the nearest rover for this latitude and longitude happens to be the one sitting in Finland. So the task goes to that and the others don't qualify. Or if I move back to Seattle and there are two rovers in Seattle, then both Rhett and I can bid for the task, and one of us will take the task, something like that, right? So that's one way to do it. And every year we pose a research challenge and sort of try and hit it. The other one, which might be orthogonal, maybe possible to combine, is, and the second one might be much easier to open up to a lot of other people and let other people participate in our efforts, right? Which is, we take all these sort of like fine-grained capabilities like navigation, communication, mapping, all those things, and define a whole bunch of levels. Like, for example, communication, you could say level 0 is just tethered to a computer with an Arduino, and like you do commands. Level 1 is it's over Wi-Fi. Level 2 is something like what Rhett is doing over a sort of custom radio. Level 4 might be outdoor using GSM and the phone network. Level 5 might be a custom radio that does not rely on any infrastructure, right? So that's an example of like defining capability levels. And if you do that for like 10, 15 different attributes, you can actually do things like a race in a very distributed way, where like Anuraj's rover might be trying to do a race in Finland, and some other rover might be doing a race in Israel, but you can use the metrics to compare. Like you can say, all right, this rover is targeting total of 30 points with 5 points of navigation, 7 points of mapping, something like that. And you can start to compare apples and oranges. I guess this is like how they evaluate gymnastics in the Olympics, where the athlete says, I'm going to do 3 turns and so many flips. And then they're evaluated on the difficulty of what they tried to do, and then sort of the success in actually doing it, something like that. So I don't know if this is a potentially good framework, so or whether they can be combined. I think what you have in your list of ideas is mostly number 1, right? Cave and race and that kind of stuff, rocket launch, all those are sort of research challenge type things.
I think that in the list I presented, I tried to talk about the what. Here it's maybe more about the how, which is nicely complementary, okay? And what I like number 2 is that, for example, the race is the what. After how we do it, do we gather together, which would be a lot of fun, but not feasible this year, looking at the COVID numbers. And number 2 you present here provides an alternative to the same what. Okay, how we do it? We define a scoring method, and we run each in our corner of the world, and we have a website with a ranking, basically, right? So I like it very much for the complementarity in that sense, but I think there is a difference. I try to be explicitly on the what's, okay, to have a kind of common, concrete, if possible, concrete scenario. After how we do it is what I expect to start digging on today.
Yeah, and I think the two are coupled. Like what kind of how sort of pattern you use will kind of like constrain the what you do, and then what you do might define how the how piece works. But yeah, I think we have to discuss both in a coupled way. But the other sort of cautionary note I want to sound is, I'm not sure how ambitious we can or should attempt to do. Like, cave exploration seems like a fairly advanced mission concept to me. Whereas I think I'm probably bringing up the rear this year as well. For me, a good mission would be something like even just go outdoors and like try to go 10 meters and come back to the start point. That would be kind of like a stretch goal for me. But so you kind of have to like, I don't know, maybe the thing to do is going back to your list, maybe there's like ways to define like difficulty levels in all of them. So you take the cave exploration concept, for example, and can you ask like, is there a very simple version of map a cave that can be simulated in an indoor apartment room where the apartment acts as the cave and you like fake it in a simple way, all the way to a real cave where it's like completely outdoor with communication difficulty, low lighting and all that, right? So each of these, I think, if we pick one of these, it should be defined in like kindergarten to graduate school level versions of it.
Yes. So thank you. And that's very important, is that these are just prompts. Okay, they don't need to be like that. So map a cave is kind of a category of mapping. Okay, so a few years back, I was visiting apartments to rent a new one. Okay, and it's I saw how annoying it is. The maps you get from the website that tell you about the apartments, and when you see it for real, usually you have a shock. Okay, how different it is. Okay. And the thing that I was thinking, why don't they map apartments, in a much more accurate way, okay? Using now typically a rover, okay, or even a drone, an indoor drone, okay? And I think that's easier than mapping a cave. Okay, why? Because the environments are more geometric, okay? They are simpler to navigate and so on, okay? So what I'm trying to say here is that, for example, number 1, map a cave can be map an apartment, or it can be map a house, your house from outside, okay, to some extent. So I'm calling for your imagination of seeing these as categories of potential goals, okay. So I keep in mind there is a pending question that Rhett has asked, okay, is how do we want to work, okay? I think that's a very important I also think it's a very important question, and I don't have an answer, okay, except that we can't work in the same room.
So in terms of like of these, if you're sort of taking opinions on which one to go after, I'm tending towards the simplest challenge, which seems like the self-driving race, because it's yeah. The others are far beyond my capability, I think.
Yeah. So just one note, just a reminder that last year, I think in August or September, we talked about what we would do at the demo day. Okay. And then basically I announced what we did at the demo day with Meyer. Okay, it's the remote control game basically. Okay, with the spiders. Okay? And we there were similar comments on saying that maybe it's not feasible and so on. Okay, we still have to keep in mind that we have we have most of the year available. Okay? We have almost 3/4 available. Okay, and the thing that I think we are pretty skilled in the group. Okay, and I would not underestimate the focus that provides a clear goal. Okay, if we have a clear goal, please keep in mind that in YakRover we don't have to be. We want to be free in a way. Okay, so we work on our own build, our own topics. Okay, and here talking about some collaboration. Okay, and so let's say that we put each of us put 40-50% of our budget in time on a collaborative group. Looking at the experience of people involved, I think we can achieve quite something. Okay, I think a self-driving race is not that easy, in fact. Okay, but I'd like to encourage maybe to be a bit bold. If I can take last year as an example, the demo was not perfect. The demo had many issues and so on, but we learned a few things. I think we had fun. And people who came, apparently they had a good time. Okay, and I don't personally, I don't see any failure. Okay, in what happened last year. I'm not sure that's a good motivation talk, okay, but that was aimed at that.
If
So
we were
last year, I
to
think,
extend,
sorry, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, if we were to extend the, I guess the program that we had followed for last year's demo, which was like, I don't know. I'd be curious how you all would kind of describe what you think we did in terms of like, I don't know, these sort of discussion topics. Like it sort of seems like we had everyone sort of established their own mission, which was the demoing what they had done. And then for the spider rovers, there was actually a collaborative element of other people could kind of participate in that demo and participate in the mission, which was like super compelling, of course. And so like, if we were to just iterate on that just a little bit more, where could it be?
That's an excellent idea. Okay, and what's interesting is that that's an extension of self-driving race in this slide,
So too.
because yes, we can actually make that just more compelling. Okay, and more challenging in one way or the other. Okay, because last year, on purpose, we chose a rework environment where everything is flat, there is no obstacle, and it's already difficult only with that. Okay, and stuff like that. Okay, and so if we just tune up and say, okay, now it's not anymore in the rework. Now it's, I don't know, on a football ground. Okay, if we can steal the ground for some time, that's already quite interesting, because especially if we can have some people with wheels, okay, not on legs. So definitely. Yeah. So there is one thing that also, sorry, it's a second point, is that the experience last year, it's not only a collaborative demo, okay, it's also a collaborative development behind it, okay, and that's what I think as a group is interesting to steer, okay, to have a bit more collaboration so that we can basically make something bigger than we would do on our own, okay. And as a matter of fact, this is what happened between Maya and I last year, because of the work patterns and the workload and so on. Well, the whole thing was stepping forward because one or the other could work. Okay, and we had a weekly extra short meeting to discuss about the priorities and the how to say, the splitting the tasks basically. Okay, so Yes, the collaboration is during the demo, but also during the development. Okay, so it's a teamwork that builds on our local activities, basically. Has anyone any other kind of scenario in mind, or interests, or dream? Okay, does anyone want to share anything like that?
I like all of these, but I think the operating system focus is also important to keep in mind. So I'd like the sort of collaboration aspect to be at that level, and leaving the sort of physical mission design scenario as flexible as possible, because the uncertainty increases towards the physical realization, basically. So the more closer you get to the physical thing, the more uncertain things get. So collaboration, if we want to sort of like try and keep it successful, if we can like define the operating system experimental piece in a way that has like several good pieces that we can all do, and then the same interface is used for all of them, then all the uncertainty gets isolated. Because if one build has a broken motor, another build has like some communication problem, they'll all be localized to the physical hardware, but the software itself, I think it would be good to work on together. And well, to the extent I'm able to, but yeah. And like, I guess we can't expect to build a full operating system in a year, but we can sort of like scope out like bits and pieces of like what might be part of an operating system and relevant to the scenario we pick, right? Like tasking or collaboration, communication, something like that. So a few different small pieces of future operating system, almost like capability samples of operating system.
Yes, and interestingly, if we take that and let's say we choose a self-driving race, okay, as a more a bit more than what we did last year with the two spiders, okay. How do you see then working on the operating system and maybe integrating blockchain in this frame? Would that work?
Yeah, the self-driving race may not be the best example of that, though we can probably think of a race concept like you can do something like a relay race, like where each rover goes in turn, and rover number 1, when it finishes its destination, it tags rover number 2, and that can be an operating system function. It goes across. So we can probably make something up that stresses the operating system layer in the right way. Or we can think of like an operating system that's shared by the rovers, but is not a distributed system across the fleet of rovers. So we can think of it that way as well, like, a command interface. Like for example, one piece I'm interested on is the 3 laws thing I presented. Like if that's a premise for a type of shell, where you can give commands to a rover, and based on the 3 laws, it says yes or no, that could run independently on each of the rovers, or it could be part of like a distributed operating system, and in a more collaborative way.
Is a relay race? Okay, so I like the relay race, but I'm suddenly wondering whether we are talking about self-driving.
No, I was going to ask the same thing, because I realized that a lot of the tasks on here, they don't really say this or not, but like which of these tasks are actually autonomous operation versus how much or what sorts of things are teleoperation, and whether there's another kind of idea for a concept of like Mars-ish latency teleoperation, and how you build rovers that make that not suck. Doing missions with latency is a whole different animal, right?
Yes. This was one of the aim of the demo last year, is to feel that, okay, and it was so slow that I think we felt it, okay. But yeah, in fact, considering what Venkatesh and you, Red, have just said, if we just take a self-driving race, okay, in terms of amount, so we take the demo of last year and we upgrade it for self-driving, okay, the impact, the kind of work we will need for making the operating system for that, and other matters, okay. I'm trying to find a place for blockchain. It's pretty interesting, okay. That could already be pretty challenging even for this year. The autonomous aspect, right? But at the same time, it may not be infeasible because if we are considering the group, okay, we have people like, let's say, Sai, okay, Sai who is deep in deep learning, okay, and Anuraj. I think Anuraj, you're quite familiar with LIDAR and SLAM, right? Okay.
Yeah, 10 years
And
ago,
so-
I played with them a lot, but let's see how much I remember.
Yeah, but you know, it's like bicycle, you never forget, right? Anyway, the thing that we do have experience, I said we have the experience on the mechanical side. We have some people working on wheel designs, right? Okay, and putting that all together, okay, if we can identify a scenario and break it down into these specialties, let's say, I don't know. There are various amount of work apparently, okay, but doesn't it look like something, I wouldn't say feasible, but at least approachable? So what I mean is that we want to have an autonomous race. We take the spiders of last year, but now we don't want to necessarily teleoperate them. We want them to be also autonomous or semi-autonomous. That will require some more work on the maybe on mechanical and wheels if we adopt another chassis as well. Okay, but that will be work on LIDAR, on SLAM, and on the control software, which may or may not be part of the operating system. It seems to not. Yeah, sorry.
I'm getting a little lost because there's so much complexity here and so many different things that could be done both at the level of individual bills and at the level of all the things together. Now, I'm wondering what might be actually a good starting point which provides a solid foundation for doing all of it. So for example, it could be, and I'm not a computer guy, so I don't know how to architect operating systems in the smartest way, but maybe the right thing to do is, can you actually do a broadcast middleware, like something to which a web browser command interface can send a command, something like, go to latitude, longitude, and take a photograph and rebroadcast it to the network, something like that. That's defined at the level of abstraction of a broadcast network. What would it take to flesh out all the other pieces of that, which would be things like, all right, all the rovers will need an address on the broadcast network. They will need the ability to listen on that broadcast network and transmit on that broadcast network. They would need the ability to, like, say, I can do this task or I cannot do this task. They need to be able to look up the address of other rovers and send the other rovers messages, or to the command node and say, all right, and there might be multiple command nodes. If we have like 5 people open in browser sessions, you have basically a network of like 4 or 5 command nodes, maybe more, and 4 or 5 rover nodes all talking together. So I think that might be the strategic piece. So I think all this other stuff will start to clarify themselves if we can identify the one strategic piece that we have to build without which nothing else works. Is it the broadcast network layer, for example? Like, that's just off the top of my head, my first idea of what it should be.
It seems like the sort of thing that would come out of standardizing our control interface to where multiple rovers can kind of interact with a similar thing to what was built for the spider robots.
Yes.
But just sort of expanding that and making it, I mean, I don't actually know what else, how much is actually required to make this happen, but just so that
I mean, at a very simple level, if all the rovers can follow like 3 atomic level commands, like, go forward, X centimeters, go backwards X centimeters, and turn heading by theta degrees. Those are like commands that make sense no matter what your chassis is, whether you're using wheels or legs, right? So that's low-level commands that can be shared. If you want to go higher level, you can say something like, all rovers should be able to like take a destination and go there. And details are up to the rover. Like, if you can do it, go there. If you can't, just say no. Like that's the API. It's like X comma Y. Yes, I can go there, or no, I cannot go there. Take photograph. Like if all the rovers commit to like supporting a camera, you can do that. Like a camera has like, 5 variables, right? X comma Y comma like 3 rotational angles for pointing the camera, but we can simplify down to just X comma Y, like go to a particular location in space and whatever direction your camera is pointed, take a photograph. So that can be simplified. Or you can say X comma Y comma 3 other variables, but robots that are not capable of like gimbaling the camera will just ignore those extra parameters and just take a photo as they can. So you can like think of that way. So I think defining a minimum viable language is not that hard, so long as you're not super ambitious. But then getting all of them to actually work together within that language abstraction is, I think, non-trivial. Like off the top of my head, I wouldn't know how to like set up my rover to listen and broadcast on a network.
I think everything is relevant here. I just have a question: is to do what, for example? Because to broadcast messages and so on, but to do what, for example?
Oh, so each of these missions, I think, can be actually decomposed into that broadcast language level, right? So you can say something like, go explore a cave is the top level mission. And then I think the top level abstraction, breaking it down to the individual level commands of like, go this far, take a photograph, come back, that kind of stuff. Part of it can happen, I think, above the abstraction level of a single robot. Other stuff will have to happen below the abstraction level of the shared interface. So I think to have that discussion, we will need a strawman architecture. So one of the things one of us should do in the next few meetings is sketch out a strawman architecture for how this could work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would think of it as like all these ideas that are on here are like all completely reasonable things for a rover to do, but like it would depend on the capabilities of the particular physical rover itself, and it would depend on the location, the environment that is available. Like if you live near a cave, maybe cave exploring is a reasonable thing to do, but if you don't, then you're out of luck. And if you don't have a solar farm near you, then having a solar farmer project isn't really going to work out too well. So maybe it's more like individual rovers can have missions that are sort of dependent on the environment and the capabilities of that rover. And then what's shared though is for a demo is some sort of collaborative ability to run said mission. And then hopefully sharing some of the underlying software infrastructure to make it happen.
So are you saying to some extent that then the collaboration and would be basically at the software level?
Yes,
Yeah.
because mission design is almost too dependent on the physical capabilities that you can't really share that quite as easily.
We could actually take all these missions and say our distributed rover system can actually do all these, but each individual rover build can just pick off one of these missions as the template to try and follow. And then in the demo day, it's like anybody can issue any mission command, like somebody go explore a cave, but if only one rover can do that, 4 of them will say, no, I cannot do that. And the one that can will say, all right, I'll take the mission, right? So it's a very degenerate way of like basically creating a diagonal matrix of like, in theory, all should be able to do all the missions, but to start off, each one can do only 1 or 2 missions at most. So we can try and define like a sort of envelope of missions, and each rover will have different coverage in the envelope.
I want to suggest something. I'm not sure exactly how it goes, but imagine that we all build the same setup approximately in our living room, garage, garden, doesn't matter. And then we have a central node somewhere that takes input from all of the rovers and builds, let's call it augmented reality. So each one of the rovers, let's say mine is looking at the sofa, but it sees Eric's shoes next to the sofa, but it also sees Venkat's cat next to the sofa. So I'm not exactly sure how it goes and why it's interesting, but it's a way of having the rovers collaborate on a mapping project, but also exchange information with each other. So they're doing the same task, and each rover is giving a different piece of information, and we can see the whole integrated output.
I
We
like
are
that.
Borg.
We can,
Borg, yeah, YakBorg.
here's a simple way to sort of build on that does distributed mapping. We simply make up an artificial map that can be broken down into 9 segments like a jigsaw puzzle, and we just each take one and we print it off on, like, chart paper or something. So each of us can have like a 3x4 poster board type thing in our apartment with, like, a photographic printed map. And then the demo can be something like each of you explore your piece of the map, and because we've sort of arranged it so that they compose a larger map, the demo can involve the larger map. For example, it can be like go from point A to point B, but in virtual space, point A is in your piece of the map and point B is in Anuraj's piece of the map, and the paths that will be computed at the distributed level will force a relay race, right? It'll be like rover A has to traverse its piece, then hand off to rover B, it traverses its piece. So we're like synthesizing a virtual mission. That can be it. Or it can be just sense making. Like, imagine we're distributed exploring and you just stitch the map together based on like the command node that you're describing. It'll have to do some image processing and line up edges and say, all right, this is the full map. Like, can you reconstruct the map that way?
Added to that, I like the liberal arts approach that all that suggests, because it nicely mixes technology and well, crazy artistic ideas as well. Okay, because in fact, if we take a race basically is to cover a stretch of land basically. But why would this land need to be all contiguous in the same area of the Earth? Okay, so if each of us have, let's say, a room that is 2 by 3 meter, okay, that can be dedicated to element of these rooms, we make a map, a continuous map of that. So we give an order to these rooms, okay, and each of our rovers run in its own room basically, but all together they form only one race. Okay, so I think that's what Venkatesh just said, just rephrased, but that's pretty original and quite funny. That reminds me Dan Simon's work a long time ago. What was that? Dan Simon's, well, science fiction writer. Anyway,
if you're going in that direction, we could make a game of Clue. I don't know if everybody is familiar
yeah,
with the game of Clue. Okay, so Nature and Murder in Tokyo with a spanner, So of course we can't actually transport the rovers from room to room, but we can transport the avatars. I don't know if this is too grandiose, but having a game makes it more fun.
but Megan, what do you think about that? Is based on that idea? Oh, sorry, did I interrupt someone? No, okay, sorry. Based on that idea, okay, is that the physical infrastructure we have is a set of rooms all over the world, okay, in our homes basically, and each room has a rover and an object, a clue or whatever, okay. And we have teams that compete over this infrastructure. Okay, each team can only pilot one robot at the same time. Okay, and so we have a grid. We have robots and we have teams. Okay, and we can control easily who controls what basically at a single time. Okay, and so team A is in some room here in Tokyo doing something, and they collect information. And after that, they know they need to move to Los Angeles or they need to move to somewhere in Israel, okay, to get the next clue, okay. But they can do that only if the room is available, okay. That is that team B, who is now in Tel Aviv, let's say, will move to the next location.
I like the idea of like putting together a game kind of like Clue, but it would be good to connect it to Mars somehow. So a puzzle or mystery that somehow connects to space exploration. And a thought that just occurred to me is, instead of like murder, it can be something like maybe a spacecraft that's trying to land on Mars has like broken up and the pieces have fallen in different places. And the different rovers have to go collect the pieces and reassemble the rover, something like that. So it would be good to sort of open up something that takes that premise but puts it in a space context somehow.
If you want it to be more fun, it can be an alien which is causing sabotage, and we have to find him. So it's less practical but more fun.
It may become practical in the future. We don't know.
That's more like Where in the World is Carmen San Diego. So Where in the World is Rover San Diego.
One of the things we could incorporate in this scenario that is kind of blockchain-y in spirit is the pieces, the physical pieces that you're collecting, for example, could have like things like hashes or addresses, and you literally have to go with the camera. Like, if a spacecraft breaks up in pieces and there's like serial numbers or something like that, right? So you can literally say that you have to go take a photograph of this and transmit it, and then all the other rovers have to do the same thing. And until the secret phrase is assembled with all the pieces, you won't be able to unlock the treasure box which has fallen in one of them. So for example, if you have like 6 pieces, one of the, like maybe in Tokyo, there's a locked box that can only be unlocked with a particular hash. And to assemble the hash, you kind of have to go image pieces that are sitting in 6 other locations.
So in practice, I think that's very interesting to make the let's say the game, maybe to make it simpler in a way. Okay, instead of having a rover going in my room trying to find a clue, okay, which is typically, let's say, I don't know, a cup, okay, that would require maybe an arm and stuff like that. So that gets pretty arbitrarily complex. Okay. But if it can be, let's say, a board on which we write some hash number, whatever, and the team has to use the camera to find that hash, and basically, instead of having a physical object, we say, okay, the physical object is represented by a certain hash. Okay, and so that can be pretty interesting to make it more feasible. However, there is one thing that, to me, my interest in blockchain for the rover is more about legitimacy, okay, about integrity of a rover and stuff like that, okay. So for me, that's a bit a pity, because it's not talking about blockchain here. Talking about hashing is just fine to me here. Talking about blockchain, I don't know. I wish to find an idea where that justifies more blockchain, as we've talked about sometimes in terms of integrity of a rover and integrity of a team of rovers and stuff like that.
There's a game my family plays called Mystery and House on the Hill, and the game has two parts. And part number one is the players explore a haunted house, say, find out which rooms it has and so on. And part number two, there's a haunting, zombie or ghost. What's interesting is that one of the players is designated a trader. Now that's exactly where you use blockchain. And part of the game, if we did it, would be to let the players decide what they want to put on the blockchain and what they don't. So you have the exploratory phase where you learn what the world looks like. And then you have the mission phase. And during the mission phase, one of the rovers is evil and interfering with the other ones. And the easiest way to do that is data which is not on the blockchain, or bad data which is put on the blockchain affects what the other rovers can or want to do. So that's perhaps a natural way to put in blockchain.
Sorry, I don't want to be a party killer here, but it's a traditional way of seeing blockchain. To me, again, the way I see it for rovers, the way I justify it for myself for rovers is more about as a part of their own integrity instead of a currency that a cryptocurrency basically. Yeah. It's more about part of their immune system instead of a currency, I would say.
Yeah, but that's exactly the point. If you have a bad rover and it's injecting bad information into the system, the only protection you have against it is having a blockchain where the other rovers act as nodes and decide what they let in and what they don't. It's all about integrity checking. And we all know that blockchains have limitations like time and power. So you have to decide what you're going to put in and what you're not going to put in. And of course, you don't know which one of the rovers is a bad player.
So the whole blockchain discussion, I think, assumes that we will find a particular blockchain that's lightweight enough to run on all the rovers, right? And Anuraj is starting to look into that. But I assume we are not actually planning to like build a blockchain from scratch or anything. We're going to like look for a suitable one and try to run a node on all the rovers. Is that the idea?
I think we have two options. Option number one is we emulate the blockchain. That's really easy. And option number two, Anuraj finds something that can run on the rovers, and we run our own local fork of the blockchain. We're not going to, write anything ourselves. In any case, I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are a lot of games out there which include exploration and include, let's call it, data integrity. And maybe we can take one of them. I'm just familiar with, Mystery of House on the Hill, but maybe a different one of the games is more natural and easier to simplify, so we can play it in a distributed manner.
There is a similar game, which is an app that I don't know, I just saw recently called Among Us, okay? That has very similar dynamics, but maybe, if I'm not mistaken, the rules are actually even simpler. Among Us, so the premise is that we are in a spacecraft, okay? And there are something like 10 players, but one of them does something bad, okay? We don't know who, okay? And so each player has a mission, okay? Like turning that lever, doing this, doing that, going there, okay? And there is a sabotage. The guy who does the sabotage, okay? And so the game ends when either someone identifies the saboteur or the saboteur manages to kill everyone or something like that, okay? I'm not sure it's easier actually to cast, okay? But
this reminds me of the Mafia game. So yeah, there's
Ah,
yeah, the Mafia is, I think, what we call similar concept game in the US. But I think we're getting a little sort of afield and sort of discursive. Like I think I won't be able to think further on this mission concept brainstorm without like a straw man to react to, because right now we kind of like just have a bunch of like potential ideas for like demos and competitions and cool features and games and so forth. And I think it's clear that there's sort of a straw man architecture implied in our discussions that is capable of delivering on any of these concepts. So like, a rover with like a little lightweight node of a blockchain running, plus like, some sort of networking capability. So I think we need that before we can sort of have the next level of discussion. Otherwise we, I mean, I don't have anything more useful to say on these mission concepts until I can kind of see the architecture of the thing attempting to do it.
the architecture of the team.
Yeah, I mean, strawman architecture, like this is what we should sort of collectively try to build.
Okay, okay. So that's a very good point, because the frame of this discussion today is more, if we can go as far, great, but it was well less ambitious. It was more about trying to narrow down the kind of to see what everyone wants to do, basically. Okay, it seems that this gamification idea of the demo is pretty exciting to many people looking at the reactions. And for me, that's already good signal. Okay, and so based on that, yes, moving to the strawman architecture looks like a strong next step. Do we want to start doing that now, or because it's starting to get late, right? Or I can take that as a homework, basically, and make some proposal, build a document on which we can iterate asynchronously and discuss in another session soon, basically. How does that sound?
That sounds right. Right now, you're not just late, but I think I'm a little bit zombie because I've been up since early morning.
Oh, zombie is perfect. It's perfect, for the kind of gamification we're talking about.
Just as I was
Anyway.
waking up.
Yeah. We are 1 hour 10 minutes in the meeting. Okay. Here available to continue. But what do you think about a short break, administrative short break about the future? Okay. If I look, I hope you can see the page. Okay, it's the link I sent on Discord. Okay, and so these are some dates about are the dates that are available for cycle 2. Okay, so I see that already Venkatesh and Meyer have put their name in. Okay, great. There are more slots than people on purpose, because I'm contacted 2 people to give external people to give presentation. Okay, one is from Hawaii University. Okay, researcher at Hawaii University, and another one is here in Japan. But I'm not sure he can speak English, so I need to check with him. And so I'm trying to get them to talk soon. Okay, to talk about rovers. Today they work on rovers. But if you already have preferences, okay, even if it's a tentative one, please put your name on the list. Okay, if you don't, I'm going to chase you. Okay. On the administrative side, I see that for next week a planning meeting. Would the person, Mayor, would you give a bit more information about that?
Oh, no, I think I accidentally put that. I got the date wrong. So sorry. I thought that today was the 22nd. Today is the 14th. So I'm sorry. I just was, you can delete that.
No,
Right. Okay.
I actually wanted the opposite. I wanted to ask if somebody involved in the actual launch of these Japanese rovers to the moon could talk to us.
That's the guy I'm talking to. He's basically it's a one-man show at the beginning. Now it's a proper company, okay? But the guy is made it, okay? And I'm not. I did not expect the company to grow that fast, okay? Because 1 year ago, basically, it seems he was basically alone, okay? And this guy, to give you the kind of profile, that he was part of the team who designed the quattro propulsion of the Audi cars, okay?
Mhm.
So a pretty skilled individual, let's say, okay? And the thing that I had a feeling that he will not be comfortable in speaking in English. So anyway, I will see whether he can recommend anyone, or maybe he collaborated with universities where someone can talk about such kind of matters. Yeah. Sorry, on the administrative side, a few more items. One is that this cycle, the cycle that is finishing now, we had a talk on licensing, okay? And I think we skipped it for good reasons, okay, for focus, okay? If we can bring that back in this cycle, that would be interesting, because it's something I think most of us are not really interested, okay, in that. Honestly, I'm not really, okay, but it's something we need to take care of, okay, depending on what it can force us into a place we don't want, okay, in the future, okay. And so if we can have some introduction, some discussion about that, maybe a session, that would be fantastic, okay.
Happy to do.
I think this cycle, you suggested something like an introduction to patents and licensing, right?
Well, we were going to talk about licensing, not about patents, but sure. I've no problem.
Oh, so sorry, just my memory is probably fading. I just remember talking about licensing patents.
No,
Okay?
the two subjects are only vaguely related to each other. Licensing is more about being friends with people, and patents is more about threatening people so that they will be your friends. No, it's different.
So it's a game of
I'm happy
trolls.
to talk about either one, okay? And whenever.
I think licensing is more relevant to us in the first place, but would you be available for a session on licensing that is not your session? That is not your session on May 24th? Something earlier, if possible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have a candidate date. That would be great. Okay.
Just let's see where it fits in. I need about a week advance notice to prepare the prompts. But
yes, I would say the earliest. I would say the earliest will be 29th, because that's my next point. Is that next week? Do we have a wish for next week? Because if someone is ready to present right away, great, and let's do it. But if not, what do you think about continuing the discussion of today? And also talk about two topics, about more about field testing. Okay, so we talked about maybe some gamification, and also dig a bit more into the strawman that Venkatesh talked about, and operating system concepts. Okay, the reason for that is because it's fresh in our mind, and maybe there is an opportunity to identify pieces of operating system that we can already, split and work on our side to some extent. Okay, so to kind of map what we think we need to achieve this field test. How does it sound?
I think with the goal of like, we're going to come out of it with action items of here's the thing that we're going to build.
Yeah.
Then that sounds good.
Okay, so yes, let me try. I propose to do that, and I will prepare a strawman and a proposal of discussion items, or whatever, discussion action items. Sorry, but first discussion items leading to the action items. Okay. So
I feel the opposite. Yep. I think that it's best if we wait a few weeks and people maybe let it sink in and actually do some work on whatever they're doing, so it helps them decide how this fits in.
So that's a very valid point. But then it's my last administrative point that I want to talk about is that from April, unfortunately I'm going to be unavailable at this time and around this time basically for possibly a couple months. Okay, it's local logistics. I have to take care of my children in my mountain now. Okay, and I'm the only one available to do that, or I would say skilled, because we need to drive a car and no one else can drive a car here. Okay, so I'm sorry, but from April, for some time, I will still be active, but I won't be able to synchronize with you this meeting. Sorry about that.
Is the conflict every day at this point? Because if this time works, actually any other day will work for me as well, because it's late night for me. So,
No, it's every day of the week.
or every
Every
day
day of the week. At this time, I will be available on Sundays only. Okay, so which is perfectly fine on my side, but I understand also that it's a special day as well. Okay, so I remain active on the coordination task and so on. Okay, but if I'd like to work on this strawman idea for the field test. I really believe it's a kind of rallying sub project for all of us. Okay, and so it turns out that in this condition today, I could talk about that only next week or the week after. Okay. So to the point of raised by Mayor, which is I think very valid, that maybe we need to use time for ideas to sink in and think properly. Okay, I'm a bit constrained on that one.
I mean, we don't have to finish the discussion. We can start something like a strawman discussion and then sort of iterate back on it later in the cycle. I'm actually in favor of like doing the discussion earlier and getting to something actionable earlier, so we can try it and have time to like fix it if it fails. But yeah, either of the next 2 weeks, I think if we have a discussion, it'll be good. Maybe we can do it on the 29th.
Okay, that's
yeah.
Thank you. That's an excellent point. We have to keep in mind that anyway it's going to be an iterative process. Okay, it's right now it's like we have a grassland and we need to have a pass through the grassland, and for that we are going to need to walk it up and down quite a few times. Okay, so okay, so 29th sounds better. It looks Mayor, does it look like a good compromise? Okay, so let me do that. I don't know how to write it down, but Eric on strawman analysis. Oh wow, spelling is better. And action items for field testing. I'm not sure the game.
Sorry to interrupt, but strawman should be a synthesis, not an analysis, because what we did today was kind of analysis. So, I very specifically, I think I'm looking for a synthesis, as in like a maybe a block diagram architecture that says these are the major pieces that we're trying to build. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. Okay, so I'll prepare that for a couple of weeks, and the expected output is to have a working document and a list of action items to at least discuss. Okay.
So since next week, if nobody has an idea, I have a suggestion for next week. Let's have like a relaxed exploration of all the links we've been posting, because we keep posting links and not actually talking about them. So that might be actually a good use of our time. Like once every cycle, we should kind of have a just check out all the links we've been posting kind of session.
I think that should be boosted on Twitter, because that's the kind of thing people might want to join. To hear other people talking about, various topics that they thought were interesting.
So then to make it a bit actionable and what do you think about getting some homework that each of us commit like maybe to read, I don't know, 5 of these links, and it doesn't matter whether there is whether we read the same or not, okay? But we pick 5, okay, and we represent them at the discussion next week.
Sure. How about 3?
Sure, sure.
How about we just go and look what we've posted and then forgot about, and if depending on how many you've got. Signal boost.
I like the allocation.
Yeah.
That's very efficient way to allocate tasks. I like it. And so, but be careful because that may deter people to post more.
Is there a way to see a laundry list of the links, or you just scroll back through the threads?
I think scroll back is the most.
Okay.
We might need to
the
scrape
only,
it.
And then just a question on the upcoming, are people talking about their builds this cycle, or you're just picking topics to discuss?
So it's usually what we do is that it's an update of your build, and after a topic of interest. Not always, okay. It can be also to talk about a topic of interest, like something you learned about motors, for example, or or sensors and or the Raspberry Pi, for things like that, basically.
Understood.
I just actually put a goal down just to motivate myself and made it slightly less ambitious. I was going to get both my rovers running. I'll shoot for 1. Let's see if I can get it done.
Yes. Okay, so we are almost 1 hour and a half in, and start getting late. Is it? Are we good for this weekend?
Good.
Yeah. Thank you for your time, and we see you next week.